I thought it might be interesting, because we're talking about so many threats and things like that, to have this conversation over cocktails, which might help me deal with my anxiety over what we're about to talk about. But Adam's a little bit more from the private sector, probably able to have a drink and talk about these issues, where I think Mr. Silvers is under government rules. But these are kind of my notes for conversation with Adam, and they're all over the place, because anytime you get to sit down and talk to this particular individual, he just spits out interesting data points that are terrifying and brilliant at the same time. So I don't know if I'm going to follow these or not, if I can figure out the map, but I want to start by, not only are you the Chief Adversary Officer, is that a new title?
Yeah.
Okay, did you come up with it?
Somebody did, not me. Yes.
Okay, at CrowdStrike. But Adam, I want you to just talk a little bit about who you are and how you got into this before we dive into where we are today and what you're thinking about threats.
Sure, yeah. I've been a huge nerd my entire life. And when I was 14, I started, this is way back when video games were not as simple as you plug it in, you know. So I was doing video games on my 3D6 computer back in the 90s. And it took a lot to get the game running. You had to mess with the memory, you had to tweak this and edit that. And by the time I got the game running, I didn't actually care about the game. I was more interested in what caused it to tick and talk. And then I found modems, and I started dialing in to talk to other weirdos on the internet. And there's a few weirdos on the internet if you haven't been there. And I learned just a lot about computer security by talking to weirdos and making mistakes. And
yeah, and you didn't do so great in college at first either, which is a little bit not what I would have targeted.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it was a .86 my freshman year. Yeah, stay in school, kids. Yeah.
Well,
in fact, it was so low they wouldn't let me leave. You have to stay. And then I switched to political science.
Yeah, I was going to say you found some way to make your passion, I think, which is really important work for you.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the scary stuff. Did you read the paper today?
I did. Well, not the paper, but
okay, fine. Did you read your phone today?
Yeah.
And what scared you today about what you read?
Well, I mean, I don't think anything scared me, but I think the story that has been really interesting today that I don't know if everybody's seen. There was a healthcare organization that was hit by ransomware, and it's been in the news quite a bit. And 2 or 3 days ago, the ransomware as a service. So I'm going to make everybody put your hands up, but I know we're standing between you all on cocktails, so we're going to just drag this out as long as possible.
I invited them to bring them in.
Yeah, bring them in. Who knows what SaaS is, right? Probably, hopefully everybody who's paying attention. So ransomware as a service, is very similar. Threat actor builds a ransomware platform. They don't do the ransom attack. Maybe Suzanne does a ransom attack. But what happens is they take 20%, 30% off the top for providing the ransomware as a service.
Right.
And they shut down in the middle of a major ransom incident after the victim had paid $22 million to get all their data back. And not only did they shut down, but they stole the money from the customer, the user of this ransomware as a service, $22 million, and they disappeared. And what they did was they left a Department of Justice seizure site up, so it looked like DOJ seized the ransomware as a service platform, creating massive confusion for everybody involved.
But is Rob Silvers gone? It would have been interesting to hear how his morning meeting went with his team today. All right.
I imagine it was something like, did we do this?
Yeah, exactly. Is that our website or not? CrowdStrike puts together an annual report every year of threats. And I always love talking to you when this comes out, because there are things that you can kind of see coming, and then there are things that you can't see coming. Obviously, we're talking about a lot of stuff this year. It feels like ransomware has kind of fallen off the agenda. I remember talking to Kevin Mandy in 2020 saying, ransomware is the biggest threat of our time. And in 2021, everything started to sort of cloud the environment when it came to threats around the world. Ransomware was still important. Here we are in 2024, and guess what? It's still the year of ransomware.
Oh, yeah.
What did you learn? What have you, telling people from your report?
Yeah, so I mean, ransomware has become kind of commoditized, I think, in the last year. We've seen that the ransom amount has gone down, but the volume of ransom attacks has gone up. Ransomware is no longer just about the encryption of data. They're increasingly, in fact, we saw a 76% increase in the number of victims that had their data on what we call a dedicated leak site. So not only do they encrypt the data, they also steal it. And they'll ransom you to get the keys back to unlock your data, and they'll threaten to disclose your data if you don't pay them. So it's kind of a little carrot and a little stick, I guess.
Data extortion component.
Data extortion. So we've seen an uptick in that, and the big challenge that organizations have is that the adversaries are constantly finding an easier way to get in. When they raise the bar and make things more difficult, what ends up happening is that, I guess when a door closes, a window opens type of thing. And we've seen that the threat actors, rather than work harder to get that same access, they're actually just moving towards going after identities.
Well, so kind of the old joke, and I've covered cybersecurity for more than a decade now, and the old joke was always, it's the same thing at every single conference, change your password, two-factor authentication, right? Are we seeing that people are getting that message, or are they still not getting that message? It's basic hygiene.
The devil's in the details. So two-factor authentication is not a silver bullet. And when the pandemic hit, everybody kind of pushed 2023's digital strategy up to 2020. They rolled everything out that they probably weren't ready for. And the answer was, well, slap multi-factor authentication on it and it's good to go. What we found is that you need to have identity protection. So if you have multi-factor authentication, it's not something that can't be defeated. So you need to have some way to see, is Suzanne coming in from Atlanta on her iPhone? Why is she all of a sudden in Oxford on a different iPhone, right? And so we've seen these attacks. There's a group we track called Scattered Spider, which has been vastly performant this year. They've had probably over 100 victims since they started in April of 2023 doing ransomware. And it's always the same story. They either SIM swap, or they, with multi-factor authentication, if you don't have protection around that, somebody can reset that. They can change it. They can modify it. And so that's what they're doing. They're coming in by targeting the identity of a user, and then once they get in, they have to lay low. I've been using this analogy, so if you've heard me talk about this, forgive me for repeating myself, but with the modern security stack, things like CrowdStrike's EDR, endpoint detection and response, we've made it very difficult for a threat actor to bring a foreign object, like should I bring a bottle of water through the airport? Anybody try to do that lately, right? Or for a while, they'll stop you probably most of the time. And so the attacks that worked this time last year, bringing in a malicious Excel document with macros enabled and deploying this tool called CrowdStrike, that doesn't work anymore. That's like trying to bring a water bottle to the airport. Well, what do you do if you can't get the water bottle into the airport? You could try to hide the water bottle or come up with some creative way to smuggle it in, or you could just take, a employee's ID badge and sneak into the airport as an employee who's got less scrutiny over what they're bringing in. And so that's what threat actors have done, is they've gone after that identity because they can kind of take that transitive trust and use that to get access to sensitive systems, and there's nothing to detect.
And before there was a lot of phishing scams, right? And employees, it's so hard when you've got companies to get every employee to not click on things they shouldn't click on. And I think we've all, have you ever clicked on anything you shouldn't have clicked on?
I mean, all the time.
Really? But you can fix it, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Most of us can't fix it.
But here's the thing, right? Like, all of these attacks now are starting off with somebody calling the help desk and saying, hi, it's Suzanne, my password's not working. And the help desk people are metriced on how quickly they turn that around, and did you have to call back for a second call? So it's in their best interest to solve Suzanne's problem. And so when I say my password's not working, they're like, oh, well, let me help you reset that. Who's your manager? Where's your work location? That's what they're using to verify the identity before resetting the password. And you could hear, I've listened to hours of these calls, and you could hear them typing like, oh, my manager's Dave. And the help desk person's like, not Dave. Mike, is it Mike? And like you could actually hear the relief in both their voices when they find the right manager and get the password reset.
Oh my God! See, I told you I needed a drink for this. Who has the advantage right now? The adversary, or and I guess maybe a better question: the adversary always has an advantage because they're the ones attacking. But are you seeing differences between sort of criminal groups and nation states? And just kind of walk me through kind of the trends that you're seeing.
You know, they're actually more closely aligned, I think, than you would think in terms of how they get in. Back to who has the advantage, I think the defender has to be right 100% of the time, and the attacker only has to be lucky once. And we see that identity is the #1 thing. So if you take nothing away from anything I ever say, in the coming year, identity protection is the most critical thing to implement. And what we're seeing is what we're calling cross-domain visibility. A lot of enterprise and security teams are focused on the endpoint, the laptop, the server, but they also need to look at the identity stack. They also need to look at the cloud stack. We saw a 75% increase in cloud attacks in the last year.
75% increase in clouds. That's not at all alarming because what we heard this morning was Ukraine basically saved itself in the initial invasion by Russia by moving everything to the cloud. And everyone's being told to move everything to the cloud. And you're saying what percent increase in cloud?
75% increase.
Should we be worried about this?
Well, look, I mean, the cloud is secure out of the box. And this is, I think, one of the things that we need to keep in mind. But the cloud still has those identities.
Yep.
And the cloud is configured by people that make mistakes. So if you combine those two things, you have this intersection of identity risk and misconfiguration, security posture management risk. That's where the problem is for the cloud. A year and a half ago, I would have said, Suzanne, the cloud attacks are all Bitcoin miners or cryptocurrency miners. There's really not a massive threat there. But we've seen that nation states and e-criminals have moved into the cloud in a way that is unprecedented, and it's really interesting. Like, they'll use legitimate cloud services to export things, right? So that the organization never sees it happen. The visibility, that cross-domain visibility is important because the enterprise security team isn't looking at what's happening in the cloud. They're gonna get pantsed.
Yeah, okay, great. Was that
a good?
That was great. I'm terrified.
Nobody wants their pants pulled down.
Would you say that there were any surprises in this year's report or things you didn't hear? And it's my favorite question to always ask you because it's the most difficult. But you're so focused on the day-to-day that you're not always thinking ahead. I think in your case, that's not true.
Well, I appreciate that. Latin America was one thing that I think we weren't expecting to see the massive uptick in targeting of Latin America. I think as an emerging market, that is an important thing to consider. And from an investment perspective, as you're investing in, potentially emerging markets, and there's a lot of interesting companies coming out of these emerging markets, making sure that they follow good security practices as well is going to be important. And the other thing is the speed of the attacker. In 2022, we calculate this thing called breakout time. Breakout time is how long does it take from when a bad guy gets onto a system and they move to the next system. In 2022, it was 84 minutes. In 2023, it was 62 minutes. The threat actors got 22 minutes faster on average. And the fastest breakout time we saw in 2022 was 7 minutes. In 2023, it was 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Think about that. In 2 minutes and 7 seconds, you can miss a critical attack getting a cup of coffee or using the restroom. And that is the pace that defenders need to be keeping, is actively engaging these threats and doing hand-to-hand combat as soon as they make access, because you don't have the time to go get that cup of coffee or use the restroom because that attack could be over by the time. And one of the things that's interesting, I'm gonna spring this on you because we were talking outside. We looked at a breakout time by sequence of what happened, and I think it was 53 minutes and something seconds. 34 minutes of the 50 some odd minute breakout was spent trying to brute force the password. So that's the identity portion of the attack. The next 20 minutes was the deploying of the tools in the ransomware. So that gives you a sense that that is, if you're trying to think about this as an economic problem, where should you invest the defense right now is on that front end, that identity attack, getting that password. And Microsoft just got hacked a couple of weeks ago, pretty largely in a identity attack where a threat actor did password spraying to a test tenant or a legacy tenant and blew right through the entire Azure cloud and got into their legal, cybersecurity, and executive leadership team's emails.
Yeah, which is also not what you wanted. Worst headline you can imagine. You know, I asked...
Since the one before that.
Yeah, there's always another one. I just asked the Undersecretary the question about sort of imagination and failure of imagination, and I can't imagine with what you've seen and how quickly you see things emerge in terms of new tactics, new procedures, new groups, new ways that these groups are organizing or reconstituting sometimes themselves. What do you think about when you try to imagine where this is all going or what's next?
Yeah, generative AI is probably the big thing, and I knew Rob mentioned that, and I showed, you guys couldn't see this, I'll show you at the happy hour, but I was showing her, I did a deep fake last night of my body with our CTO's face, and it took maybe about an hour on a pretty high-end NVIDIA GPU, but the level that somebody like me can do that inside of an hour on consumer-grade hardware, think about what that means for this year. We've got 42% of the Earth's population electing new leaders in 55 elections. We've already seen generative AI deep fakes or cheap fakes in Taiwan, and when, you know, I know you're very close to the Ukraine conflict, think about Moldova and Transnistria and all of the things happening there, the potential for these types of, you know, deep fake influence operations to occur, it's terrifying.
Okay, so let's use technology against technology. What are you thinking in terms of, I mean, obviously the companies that are doing the deep fake detections are one area. Let's broaden out the tech pool a little bit more. How are you thinking about the general threat of disinformation in election years, as you mentioned, when disinformation campaigns are pretty easy, they're pretty cheap, they're pretty effective because people don't read anymore, they only follow what they want to follow. How are you thinking about the broader technology pools in ways to engage these kinds of threats and address them?
It's a big challenge, and as you said, confirmation bias, right? I think of like, I got, you know, a Fox News dad, and you know, he's...
I got one of those too.
Yeah, he'll read the headline, he's like, this is what's happened, this is the truth, like it's on Twitter, and he'll just like send it to me, I'm like, it's demonstrably false, like, but when somebody...
You try the argument, because I just gave up.
No. With confirmation, I'm like, yep.
Yeah, okay, done.
But with confirmation bias, you know, people are seeing that, and then they're amplifying it, they're reposting it, they're, you know, whatever. So I think we need to build the detection and visibility of that into these platforms so that we can flag it automatically. I haven't seen that happen yet. You know, but... You
mean flagging when something is just blatant disinformation
or the video, right? Like, I mean, with the conflict in Israel, for example, so when October 7th happened, we start seeing a lot of deep fake images or generative AI-based images where, you know, it's a heartbreaking image of like a child in a horrible situation, and you're looking at it, and the kid's got 6 fingers. Or they're holding a cat, the cat's got five legs, right? That's
something's off.
A telltale sign of the use of generative AI. And that is where we need to start to, you know, there's like community notes on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it these days. You know, I think we need to be building the detection of that into those platforms. And companies that are really thinking about how to solve that problem are interesting to me in terms of how do we bring that technology to bear.
Yeah, it's terrifying when you think about how, well, the part of the problem is the user, right? Because we make snap decisions so quickly. We don't take the time to investigate things, and so technology can't really fix that problem.
Well, that, and then, you know, from the election perspective, this is going to be real interesting because we've already seen fake Joe Biden robocalls. And think about if something like this happens in late October of this year, before anybody can react to it, and that starts to, it's a meme. It's like a virus. It propagates through everybody's social media. It's going to make things real difficult to walk back.
What do you think about these companies that are trying to address disinformation, and particularly when you think about like media, for example, no one trusts media, or you find the one you like and that's the only one you watch, or that we're getting information on platforms that are not media, traditional platforms. What do you think about when you think about the future of tackling this issue? Because like I mentioned, it can't just be tech, but there is a place for tech.
Yeah, I mean, tech is the cause of and solution to all of these problems, right? So I think there's a lot. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think, we're going to just have to hope that the good guys can out-tech the bad guys.
Yeah, I like that. That should be the headline.
All right. Cyber arms race or AI arms race.
What is the advice now? And I just want to know, because I want to get it for free and not pay for it. What is the advice that CrowdStrike is giving its clients based out of what you've learned on this latest report?
The number one thing that organizations need to start thinking about and investing in is the identity piece of the problem.
Really, it's that big.
Yeah, because we can today with technology instrument those identities. So what happens if we find something bad, CrowdStrike finds something bad, or a customer using our product finds something bad on a computer, they can network contain it and they can remediate it remotely. And that means that they can react as quickly as they need to when the pace of the attack is 2 minutes and 7 seconds. On the identity side, you can get in front of that attack. This is really where the most valuable resource is, because if Suzanne logs into her account and something's off, we can actually contain the identity. Right? You're not logging into a computer, you're logging into a cloud service, but we can actually stop your account from doing anything if it's coming off of a different iPhone, or it's coming off of a different location, or you're in Santa Monica right now and 30 minutes from now you log in from New York, somebody could flag that. So identity security is no longer nice to have or nice to talk about. It is critical. It is table stakes. And then if you're using cloud services, having the right visibility into the cloud and the right visibility into your posture, security posture, is essential too. One of the most cool things that people do when they first start with the cloud might be to stand up a storage bucket. Like on Amazon, it would be S3. And the first mistake they're gonna make is to put excessive permissions on that bucket and expose all their data to the internet. And somebody's gonna come along and find that. So having the cloud security posture management lets you see a bucket with bad permissions so you can fix it before somebody steals your data and extorts you.
So this essentially is sort of the future, but where we are right now with the cross-domain, being able to see what's going on also across all parts of your. Why isn't this something that we thought about 10 years ago?
Well, I think 10 years ago, everything was very much focused on the enterprise, right? The servers and the workstations, and there was an artificial boundary around that. Cloud was not prevalent. Cloud was not prevalent, and identity was part of the enterprise. As we moved away from the enterprise being, I call it, I don't know if this will track, Mentos, the candy, it's like crunchy on the outside, soft and chewy on the inside. That was effectively the security model that we had 10 years ago, was that if you build a wall around it, you could protect that perimeter. Perimeterized security is long dead with the cloud and with identities, and people can log in remotely. They're not coming into the office anymore, and they're logging into cloud services. They don't have to log into their workstation on the VPN to do what they need to do. And so because of that, we've extended that security perimeter onto your mobile device, onto your watch, onto your iPad, or whatever it might be. And so now we have to secure these things differently.
Yeah, I'm stressed out. Okay, we have, I know, I'm like, on my watch.
She's like taking the watch off, like,
We have 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Yes, does anybody
left
have
to
a
scare the people?
burning question for Adam? Anything that I asked that is terrifying that we haven't touched on? Everybody's so much more relaxed than I am. Okay. So one piece of advice for me or for your friends or your family or about what we're not thinking about what we should be?
Well, the number one thing that I get asked from like regular people,
Yeah.
not the
Regular
nerds I
people.
usually deal with, is what should I do? So I'd say that the number one thing that you could all take away to better secure yourself would be to use a proper password manager and to not reuse passwords. If you think about how these attacks unfold, let's say you have a Washington Post account and Washington Post gets hacked and then the passwords get dumped and leaked to the dark web.
Right. It's
Then-
also your bank account password and your, yeah.
Password, I love doing this. Put your hand up if you reuse passwords.
If you use passwords in general.
Yeah, look around. Anybody whose hand is not up is a liar.
Okay, so use a password manager.
I like
because they
1Password.
actually work.
You got to be careful because there's like LastPass, I think it was, has been hacked a couple of times.
Yep,
So
yep.
make sure that you have one that's reputable. 1Password's really good, and I know a lot of things are moving to passwordless solutions.
Okay, so you use that. What else do you use for your watch and your phone? And give us a quick little tech stack.
Tech stack, CrowdStrike, obviously.
Obviously.
I think that's really, I think, the number one thing is
Is the
to just
password
make sure that you
manager.
have the password security, and then don't use text messages for multi-factor authentication. Scattered Spider has made a lot of money doing SIM swapping. If you don't know what SIM swapping is, your phone is a radio, and that radio talks to a tower, and that talks back to the whole mobile network. And someplace in your mobile provider, whether it be AT&T or T-Mobile or whoever, they have the SIM card on your phone registered to your account, to your phone number, to your billing address. So what a threat actor can do is they can get access to the billing system, or they can simply social engineer the telecom and say, hey, this is Suzanne, I got a new phone. Can you swap it for me? And then swap it over to a SIM that they control. And then when they try to do that multi-factor authentication, it goes to their phone, not to your phone.
Right.
And so then they're able to use that to log in. So SMS-based authentication, if you have that as an option, do not do it. Use the Google Authenticator app or whatever authenticator app you want to use.
Okay.
But that means that you've got kind of a shared secret between them. The other trick that I sometimes will use is you can use like a VoIP number, like Google Voice or something like that, and then you can use that for SMS because it's not actually going to the telecom provider, so they can't SIM swap you. But SIM swapping is something that is happening literally every day right now, and it sounds like it doesn't, but
But it is. I think we just need like a new little private signal group for everyone in this room on Adam's tip of the day. Make me feel a lot better.
And then, of course, I've seen this at this conference. You probably can't see on my phone here, but I've got this privacy screen on here, and I've noticed a lot of times people, you got one? All right. I see people on airplanes, and they're on their laptop. Like last week, we had our sales kickoff meeting, and a competitor had a sales kickoff meeting, and I looked over, and one of the competitors had all of their targets for the next year on a PowerPoint, and I was like,
wow. Which competitor would that be?
oh, I'm not gonna.
It's true.
I don't have any drinks in me yet. Maybe later.
All right. I can't thank you enough for just the tips, the conversation. I think it's always fascinating. I always learn a lot. It's always really insightful because you're right kind of on that leading edge of what's out there and what's coming. So thank you so much, Adam Meyers.
And I'd like to say, sign up for the Cypher Brief because there's all kinds of good information that you get from the Cypher Brief and from your podcast.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.